911, what's your emergency?
The following content is graphic, emotional, and includes dark humor that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised, explicit content included. These stories are based on real life EMS and first responder experiences. The calls are real, the providers are real. Names and patient details have been changed to protect privacy. Episodes may include trauma, suicide, abuse, medical emergencies, mental health struggles, or things your HR department would definitely not approve of. Any advice, opinions, or discussion of medical procedures are based on personal experience and should never override your local protocols, medical direction, or training. Use your damn brain. Follow your guidelines and your local or agency protocols, follow your training, and when in doubt, call med control. Most importantly, if you're struggling, don't do it alone. Talk to someone, a coworker, a friend, a therapist. Or hell, reach out to me. I'll answer. Need help right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org.
All right, you're listening to Dispatch and Dysfunctional, where chaos has a pulse and shift change is never guaranteed. Today's guest knows a thing or two about carrying weight, not just in uniform, but after it comes off. She's a nurse with more than 30 years in healthcare, most of that in hospice and end of life care. She's an author, a coach, and she's on a mission to remind us of something in EMS and nursing that culture tends to forget. You can't pour empty you can't pour from an empty cup. Here's the thing about Jenny, she's not another burnout story or a treat yourself influencer preaching bubble baths and crystals. She's a nurse who's done 3 decades in the trenches, hospitals, ICUs, hospice rooms, the places where exhaustion meets grace and where caring too much can hollow you out if you're not careful. She's held hands at the very edge of life. She's watched families break, rebuild, and break again. And somewhere in all that loss, she's realized the same thing many of us miss. If you don't fill up your own cup, this job will drain it dry and hand it back cracked. That realization became her mission, a way to help the rest of us survive the world without losing the parts of ourselves that make us want to do it in the first place. Jenny, before we dive in, I want to start with this. You've written Self Care Isn't Selfish. You've built the Becoming Method, and you've spent years helping caregivers stop burning themselves alive for the job. When someone finishes listening to this episode, whether they're a nurse, a medic, or just someone barely holding it together, what do you want them to walk away with?
I want them to walk away with knowing that A, it really is important to prioritize self care and why, and B, that it's simpler than you think.
Very well put. Very well said as well.
Well, thank you.
So, Jenny, let's rewind to the start. What first pulled you into nursing? Was it a family? Was it a calling, or did you just want the wild schedule and the glorious paycheck?
Well, the funny thing is, Chris, when I first decided that I wanted to become a nurse, I was young and I liked the thermometer. I had been sick a lot when I was
Okay.
young. And that's one of the things that I really remember is the thermometer that the nurses had. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And so that was my original motivation for becoming a nurse.
I got you. Okay.
Not the most selfless one, but that's what started it. And then later I went through a time where I wanted to do something more mental health related. I was looking at psychology and things like that, but I decided right out of high school to go for practical nursing because it was a short program and I thought that I was going to get married. Thankfully I didn't, but my mom had wanted me to finish college before then. So I decided to do that. And really I've loved nursing. I've always known that I wanted to work with people and help people in some way.
I got you. So, hospice is a very heavy corner in healthcare. A lot of us in EMS can handle the blood, the trauma, the chaos, but the long silence of dying, that wrecks us more than people admit. What drew you there?
I had a friend whose dad was on hospice. He had been sick, he had cancer, and then he went to the ER one day because his abdomen was purple, and that had happened very suddenly, and his lung cancer had metastasized to his liver. And so he was sent home on hospice with 2 weeks to live. And they weren't a super medical family. And so I kind of stayed with them for those couple of weeks. And that was really my introduction to hospice. And I thought, this is such a cool thing, like to be able to be at home and be surrounded by the people that you want to be with and be able to go out on the porch and smoke if that's what you want to do. And it was such a unique concept to me because I had worked mainly long-term care and in doctor's offices, things like that. And so being able to be in that kind of setting and be comfortable and live life on your terms for the rest of your life was something that really impacted me. And so a couple of months after that, I applied at the hospice where he had his services through, and I worked there for 12 and a half years.
Wow. I bet that helps the patients out a lot more in the end than going to, tertiary care or palliative care in the hospitals. I think in my mind, it helps a lot of their mental anguish, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Well, and it does kind of depend. There are some people who really don't want to be at home, whether that's because they're afraid to be at home or they don't want their family members to have those kind of memories. And it's the same way with the families. There's ones who really want them to be there and want them, to be in, in their own bedroom and things like that. And others who are kind of put off by that. So one of the things that, that I believe with healthcare in general, but especially with hospice care is, we really need to meet people where they are. And I think that's part of what sparked my desire to personalize things when it comes to self-care as well, because I see the importance of, and I've seen that, for my whole hospice career, especially, of really individualizing care and not just assuming that because something looks or feels right to one person, that's going to be right to everybody else, even if they have, the same disease process or a lot of the same circumstances. We're all unique.
Very true. Yeah, I love how you just put that. So I know from reading your history, I see you went to nursing and then life threw you a curveball. You lost your mom, who was also a nurse. Mm-hmm. And that changed how you saw the job, right?
Yes. So mom and I went to school. Like I said, I went to LPN school right out of high school. And I joke that my mom and I graduated together twice because she was pregnant with me when she graduated from high school. And so she had worked, minimum wage jobs and had worked her way up into things, but she had always wanted to have a career in nursing as well. And so when I got out of high school, we went to practical nursing school together.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. And, I wish I would have realized then then it was kind of fun, but looking back now, I really do cherish that time together. And we even worked at the same place for a while, but I worked afternoons and she worked midnights and we worked on opposite ends. But, she was definitely someone who was a caregiver at heart. She would do anything for anybody except herself.
Wow,
and
that's
she
awesome.
was too busy taking care of everybody else's needs. And so many of us that are in healthcare are like that. We feel like we're so called to take care of everybody else and we'll get to ourselves, when we're done. Well, it's like a to-do list, when does a to-do list get done?
Right. That actually brings me to my next question, in all honesty, is here's what I know from EMS is, we're damn good at patching up other people and damn terrible at patching ourselves up.
Absolutely.
What do you see as the biggest reason nurses, medics, and caregivers fail at self-care?
Well, one of the big things that I hear is feeling that it's selfish. I've got all these other people to take care of, they're counting on me. So I don't have time to take care of myself because that's, that doesn't need to be where my mind is. So that's one of them. Another one is I don't have enough time and I don't even know where to start. So, it's so ingrained in a lot of us to focus on everybody else, that when you do suggest, okay, well, take a little bit of time for yourself, it's like, well, what would I even do? Because we don't take the time to figure out what is it that refills my cup, what really restores me, until we get to that point where, like you said, life throws us a curveball, and we can only neglect ourselves for so long before something does happen, before we realize that, hey, I've got to do something different. And that's kind of what started my journey, was my own burnout. After I said, like, I'd been at the hospice for 12 and a half years, and it had just come to a point where I gave way too much of myself for way too long. And I ignored all of the symptoms that, that things were not going well. And I really needed to start prioritizing myself. And I eventually came to a point where I had to, because I was miserable. And I left, and I spent quite a bit of time and effort and money to figure out, like, what is it that I need, and what do I want, and what do I want the rest of my life to look like?
Yeah,
And
I can I
go ahead.
can I can meet you on that one. As I've actually just recently started going to get help myself, but I noticed I was having a burnout crisis in the end when my dad passed, and I couldn't even cry about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the rest of my family's crying. I'm sitting there like, okay, he's dead.
Right.
There was no compassion in the end, in my opinion, of myself, and that's, I think, part of the burnout process that I started feeling, and it really sucked, and I regret it to this day. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad I did hold it together better than I thought I could. But it was just the burnout, I think, holding it together.
Right. And that is, when we get to where when we've seen so much, we've held so much, like, space and trauma for other people, that, we can't deal with it on our own anymore. We're full, and that's the end. And that's what happened with me and my mom, to a certain degree as well. There was a part of me that had a lot of regret, and I really did feel a lot, but I still wonder, and she's been gone for 7.5 years now. And there's still a part of me that thinks, I'm not sure I'm completely through all of that yet.
Right.
And I don't believe we ever get over the loss of someone, but I do believe that, like a lot of things, if we don't deal with them in the moment, at some point we're going to need to, or it's going to come back and affect us in some way. And sometimes when we least expect it.
Yeah. Again, I can attest to that one myself. I actually, going through paramedic school, uh, I actually wound up having a stroke halfway through due to the stress and the losing my dad, and everything just built up, and it actually accumulated so bad to where I had a TIA. Um, and of course, I didn't know what caused it. They're like, "Oh, it's your diabetes," but we can't guarantee that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, "Oh, okay,
Wow.
yeah." So that was that. That's been an interesting thing, and that actually brings me to this question I got here for you. Is so we've all heard the old "suck it up, buttercup" approach: laugh it off, crack a joke, keep moving. The gallows humor keeps us alive until it doesn't.
Right.
Let me throw this one at you. When does this coping stop working?
Ah, I think that's different for all of us. But I do believe that we know when it's coming. We know when things aren't working as well as they used to. We know when we're not feeling as much in certain areas, and maybe we're feeling a little too much in other areas. And we can push it down, and we can ignore it, and we can laugh it off for a while. But, it's listening to that voice that sometimes is in your head, where you kind of get those little, I just know something's not quite right. I know I need to do something different, but I don't know what it is. Or sometimes we don't even get that in our head. We can be so removed from that we feel it in our body, but we're not really, like, thinking about it. We're not feeling those emotions, but we're feeling those physical symptoms. So maybe it's having headaches more than usual, being, more tired or less tired, or having a lot of muscle tension, stomach upset, all of those kind of things. Those are our body saying, hey, something needs to be different. you need to do something. And we get those warning signs, and I'm kind of curious, did you get some signs like that in hindsight, prior to your TIA?
Yes, ma'am. I think I did. I really
Uh-huh.
do. It's sad that I didn't catch on to it. And I think that's how. I hate to say it this way. That's how I think all healthcare is trained in the end. Is,
Mhm.
as you said earlier, we're trained to treat others and not ourselves.
Mhm.
We don't seem to see the signs in ourselves, and if we do, we just kick it to the curb like it's nothing.
Right. Right. We're gonna take care of it sometime, or we feel like we just need to, like you said, suck it up and keep on going. Oh, it'll
Right.
be fine. Or, I mean, how many times do you hear people talk about, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead?
Right.
And and I usually say, well, and that's probably going to be sooner if you don't sleep. Now I say that, and I also work on call nights, and so my sleep's interrupted too. So I know there's a lot of things that are easier said than done, especially in healthcare. It's
Right.
yes, prioritizing things like sleep and regular meals and all of that. That's great for 9 to 5 type people, but it doesn't always work that simply for us.
Very true. Very, very true. So that brings me to this right here as well. So let's dig into what came from all that. You created the
Yes.
becoming method. Break it
Mm-hmm.
down for us. What is it, and how does it help someone who's one bad call away from burning out?
Yes. So, yeah, like I said, I spent a lot of time and effort and money trying to figure out like how can I how can I feel better? How can I live better, live more the way I want to live, and still be able to do the things that I want to do the things that I feel like I'm called to do. And so I ended up coming up with the becoming method because the name of my business is Becoming Your Best with Jenny Lytle RN.
Right.
And so I thought, well, when I was looking at things, I kind of looked at the nursing process where, we assess and diagnose and plan and implement and evaluate. And I thought, yes, that's kind of what we need to do with ourselves too, but I wanted to take it a little bit further. And so the way that I had kind of done things was, looking back when I pulled it all together, because of course I did this in a different way myself to begin with. I was just kind of pulling pieces together and trying to figure it out. But so it's a systematic approach to figuring out like where we are now, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. And each letter is a particular part of that. And so like the B for becoming is baseline. And with that, we're seeing, how are things now? Like, where am I in terms of my stress level, in terms of my self-care, my overall life satisfaction, kind of digging into some of those things. And then looking at the E is energize and the things that really light us up, because, the things that I do for self-care, the things that really, help to replenish me when I am running low, or, help to energize me when I'm feeling like stressed out but drained, then those may be very different than the things that work for you.
Right.
And so each of the letters really builds on each other and helps to form a clear picture of what is it that I can do that's going to help me live the life I want to live. Instead of just, looking at, like you were talking about, bubble baths and crystals, are those things that maybe do make me feel great. There are some people who love, taking a nightly soak in the bathtub. That's their thing. For me,
Right.
I know that massages like on a, every month or so, that's something that really helps me because I do carry a lot of tension, and I know that. So I know that helps me. But on a day-to-day basis, I also know that spending time in nature, starting my day with devotionals and God time for me I know that that's something that makes me better, that helps me be less stressed and just overall feel more like myself. But I mean, the reality is, do I do all of the things that help me every day? Nope, I sure don't, because life happens. But I help people put together a stress relieving and self-care plan that's personalized to them so that when they get stressed, It's not, okay, you know what? Like, I know that there's things that I need to do different, but I don't know where to start and I don't have the energy to do it. So it's kind of having that menu there where you're not trying to figure out what you need to do when you're in the trenches of being exhausted.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And again, this is bringing us to the next question. So, for the medic who's got no time, no energy, and no clue where to start, what's one thing they can do in 5 minutes or less to be able to ground themselves or reset?
Great. And this is, this is one of the things that I love, because there are so many things. We feel like we don't have time, but in reality, there's a lot of things that we know. And that's what I encourage everyone is, don't just think, well, I know that. Knowing and doing are two very different things.
Very true.
And so, stop and take a minute to take a few deep breaths. If you're able to, now if you're driving down the road, don't do this, but if you're able to, close your eyes and just, a couple slow, deep breaths. I mean, it really helps to re-regulate your nervous system, helps to slow things down, get us out of that fight or flight mode, and enable us to be able to think more clearly. Because when we are in that always ramped up, always fight or flight, and there's those of us, yes, when you work in emergency type situations, then yes, you get to where you can function on that. But when you're not in those fight or flight, you really have to hone in on your things that you're doing. Your body doesn't want to run like that all the time. And it's hard to shift out of that. When you're, when you've been like adrenaline and going, I mean, I worked in ER for a short period of time, and, but what that's like being out there. I haven't been out there like in truly horrific situations.
Right.
And
it's not healthy at all
that's got to
for
take a
anybody.
toll.
Right. And that's golden what you just said too, as well as, and that's what we all forget is, self-care isn't vacation. It's a pause, it's a break, it's a check-in for our own selves, for our partners, for our loved ones. It's something we all need to get grounded with again.
Right. And, so breathing is definitely, I mean, that's one of the quickest and easiest. And I mean, you're always breathing. So just change it up a little bit.
Right.
Getting out in nature, if you can do that for a minute or two, just to be out, even if it's cold, even if it's hot, step outside for a minute. It doesn't have to be a lovely view. If it is, then great. But just getting some fresh air and, hearing what's going on, seeing what's going on, just taking a step away from all of the hecticness of life, that especially life that can come along with working in healthcare, being able to do that for a minute or two. I love to, kind of combine some of those things, maybe step outside and take a 3 to 5 minute walk. If
Right.
I'm able to do that, where I'm breathing a little deeper and I'm out in nature and I'm just kind of looking and taking, right now I'm in Indiana. And so I was driving today in between patients, and I was like, wow, the leaves are just really changing. They're absolutely gorgeous. The sun was just shining through them just right. The temperatures are finally not sweltering. And, just being able to really just slow down and appreciate that for a minute it's something that makes us be able to go on and do all of the other things that we need to do without feeling like we're so exhausted. And especially if we throw a little gratitude for things like that in there.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And that actually brings me. You said this a minute ago about your faith. Is you've been openly about your faith and how it shapes your values and keeps you grounded. That can be tricky in EMS and also ER or ICU, where people can either lean heavy on it or run away from it.
Uh-huh.
How has that helped you build sustainable healthcare or self-care? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, and that is something, yes, it is something that's very important to me. And I also never, I never want to be anybody that's pushy. I generally have, when I'm out and about, when I'm seeing people, I usually have on like a cross necklace, or a bracelet. And that's something that, then sometimes people will kind of approach me and say something. And it's just a way, because I want the patients that I'm interacting with to feel comfortable in, in asking me something, in approaching me, if that's something they want to do. I never want to be anybody, whether it be in work or in day-to-day life, that wants to try to push my faith on anybody else. But
Right.
it's a way for me to kind of have that soft opening. But for me, it's like my faith is it's something that's an undercurrent of everything I do. I believe that, and I know some people believe in coincidence. Some people just believe that, things just happen, and that's, that's fine if that's what you believe. I personally believe that God led me to hospice. I believe that I've been led to the majority of the jobs that I've been in. I believe that the things that I'm doing now are what I'm supposed to be doing, because I think there are so many people who are frustrated, who are burned out, who are hurting, and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to change that. And so I love being able to work with people to help them figure out like ways that really work into their lives. And, some of those people are people that share my faith, and some of them aren't. And either way, that's completely fine. I just want to be able to serve people in this way because I think that it's something that's so needed, and because I get it. I know how easy it is to put ourselves on the back burner.
Right. So if you could go back, talk to your younger version of yourself, fresh scrubs and too many double shifts, what would you tell her?
You don't have to prove yourself. Like yes, do a good job, but it doesn't make you a better person to neglect yourself. And if you want to truly be able to care for other people, and this is something that I say a lot, is, self-care isn't selfish. It's essential if we want to continue to care for others and live our best lives. So I would tell her, make time for you.
And I think that's needed for all of us in any response field. Is we should be able to provide for ourselves and not feel neglectful in providing care by giving ourselves the time we need, the self-care we need, the mental health care that we need.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So here's the thing: EMS, nursing, caregiving, they'll drain you, they'll break you if you let them. And Jenny's stories prove something that we all need to hear. Self-care isn't selfish. It's the only reason you'll last long enough to live life after the pager. The Becoming Method, her book, her story, they're not just soft tools, they're survival skills. Yeah, pardon me for that one. Jenny, thank you for joining me today. For everyone listening, where can anyone grab your book from or get a hold of you if they wanted more information?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So you can get my book in Kindle version and paperback and large print hardcover and Audible on Amazon. And you can also go to my website, which is jennylytle.com, JENNYLYTLE.com. And you can grab a free digital copy there, as well as some other free resources to help get you started on your self-care journey.
Awesome. And I'll actually be putting links in the description as well for everybody.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. This is Dispatch Dysfunctional because sometimes the worst calls make the best stories, and sometimes the best stories remind us surviving long enough to tell them.
If you think it's too heavy to say it anyway. It beats a eulogy. You don't have to apologize for surviving however you can. You're not the reason things are heavy, you're the reason they're still moving. Need support right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. You're not alone, not in this job, not in this fight. Want to share your story or connect? Visit critical-run.com or message the Facebook page Dispatched and Dysfunctional. We're building this for you, for them, for all of us.